Vladimir Putin is a traditionally trained KGB officer. The Russians had said consistently, don't do this or we're going to react. Talking about making them part of NATO, dumb idea.
Why are we so involved in that conflict? And why is Putin so hell-bent on this war as well? I've heard, it's obvious that he wants the two locations on the border that are already under Russian influence. But I keep hearing this other thing that it has to do with NATO and the woke agenda moving closer to his border. Do you think there's any validity to that, or is that just social media, internet nonsense?
Vladimir Putin is a traditionally trained KGB officer. Operated in the 80s, at the height of the Cold War. And as Soviet Union collapsed, the empire collapsed, and I think the West unnecessarily embarrassed Russia, which is a ancient and proud country, and the promises that were made. Hey, we're not going to extend NATO farther east. We're not a threat, all the rest. Of course, the neocon paradigm that is dominant in the Democrat foreign policy now is one that Russia must be destroyed and embarrassed and brought to heel, etc. I think that's a huge mistake. When you look at the resilience that the Russian people showed in World War II, I think it's easy for us in America to forget or to ignore history, right? We watch Saving Private Ryan and we see movies like that and think, we won World War II. We defeated the Nazis. The fact is, 22 million citizens of Russia, of Soviet Union, died defeating the Nazis.
22 million?
Yes. How many Americans died in World War II? 400,000. 250,000 in the European theater, 150,000 in the Pacific theater. That's it. 400,000, 22 million. While the U.S. was just invading North Africa in Morocco, Operation Torch, 1943, by then, the Soviets had erased 650,000 members of the German order of battle at the Battle of Stalingrad alone. Do you know how many Russians died at Stalingrad? 1.2 million. Okay, so they paid a very heavy price in defeating National Socialism. And so if you're a Russian, if you're Putin, a traditionally trained KGB officer who thinks of the days of Peter the Great and the greatness of the Russian Empire and making St. Petersburg beautiful again and all the rest. At no time since May of 1941 did you have more unfriendly forces at the border of Russia than now with NATO. Look, I get the Baltics, Poland, and wanting to make partners of and allied partners of them, but there's a lot of stuff we do that is unnecessarily antagonistic. You don't need to be flying B-52s across the Baltic Sea constantly in mock nuclear missile runs. So there's a lot of things the U.S. did that were very unnecessarily provocative, and the idea of adding Ukraine, which was never that much of an independent country, always part of the greater Rus, and very much a intermixing of Russian and Ukrainian language. Even a lot of the east of Ukraine speaks Russian. Kharkiv, Donetsk, Donbas, Crimea. Talking about making them part of NATO, dumb idea. Really dumb. And so it's all part of the F-U Russia, F-U Russia, F-U Russia of the neocon agenda, and I would say linked with the permanent state military industrial complex in Washington. The Russians had said consistently, don't do this or we're going to react. And I guess in keeping with the unseriousness of how Washington negotiates, just like we sent Janet Yellen to Beijing to plead for meetings and to talk about climate change, the State Department sends Wendy Sherman, who was the Deputy Secretary of State, to dissuade the Russians, and she'd been a social worker. So you're going to send a social worker diplomat. I'm sure she's a nice woman, but not the kind of imposing figure to sit across the table from Putin, who sits on the top of a gang of oligarchs and Russian generals and badasses, to say, please don't invade Ukraine. We will be very upset if you do. It's just not the right image. I mean, I think back, an early mentor of mine, a guy named Dick Allen, who was Reagan's first national security advisor, and he was sent after the election in 1980 to meet with the mullahs in Geneva, because at that point you had 52 American hostages that had been held for a year plus, the failed rescue attempt, very much a low point in American foreign policy mojo. His message is very simple. If the hostages are not released by the time Reagan makes it from the front steps of the Capitol to the White House, we're going to turn your country into a sheet of glass.
Hey everybody, I'm Shawn Ryan. Click here to subscribe to the Shawn Ryan Show YouTube channel for the hottest and most compelling interviews that you will not see anywhere else. I've also made a playlist of all the previous SRS episodes so they're easy to find. You can find that right here.